My name is Hilary Stoupa, and I am a developer with Qdabra software. Hopefully everyone can hear me. If you cannot, you might want to try leaving the meeting and rejoining. Of course, my saying this isn't going to be very helpful to you if you can't hear me. At any rate, today we're going to talk about XSLT. Again, if you were with me last week, we looked at some basic XSLT, and I thought maybe we'd take this just a little bit further this week. I made a mention of XSLT changes that you could make in your view manually in InfoPath, and I wanted to go ahead and talk about that just a little bit more. So let's get started here. This is the basic for webinar audio. If you can't hear me, it's because you don't have, well, we're assuming it might be because you don't have the correct version of Link installed. There's other things that can go wrong, of course. Next, this is the usual slide on goals. We're just going to try to spend 20 minutes covering something. Hopefully everybody picks up something that's useful to them. If you give us your contact info, we'll send you links and our demo samples. I used this slide last week too, and I wanted to include it this week in case we had somebody who wasn't here last week. This has some links for some basic XSL stuff, and you can learn the basics yourself. You don't need specialized training to learn this stuff. I learned it on my own. I think you guys can too. I think anybody who works with InfoPath probably has the skill set necessary to be able to teach themselves these things. It's just a matter of finding the right places to learn them. So here's some different places you can learn some things. Moving on. So InfoPath and XSLT, we touched on this briefly last week. InfoPath uses XSLT 1.0. Manual view changes may not round trip and might require a preserved code block. I encourage you not to make view changes that require a preserved code block. It will be a pain for you. It will be a pain for any future developer. They're just kind of bothersome to deal with. Anytime you need to change them, you have to go back to the XSLT to make the change. So the changes we're looking at today are generally simple changes that round trip. Test every change. Don't assume a change that works in filler is going to work in browser. Don't assume the changes you're making are not going to break your form. You save a backup of your form, then you save your form as source files, and as you make changes to your XSL, you may want to make backups of it as you go. So for example, do a little work, make sure everything's working, save a copy of your form, or if you're using source control of any kind, check your form in so that you've got a working copy. That's because it's really easy when you're working with your form files to make a mistake that you may or may not be able to recover from. One of the things we're going to look at is troubleshooting those mistakes. Moving on, an InfoPath XSLT has XSL, of course, XPath, and HTML. InfoPath uses Internet Explorer for rendering and filler. The browser your form is opened in for rendering in IPFS. So the XSL for InfoPath generates HTML. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that just because something works in filler doesn't mean it's going to work in browser. I think I just said that, but I can't emphasize that enough, and we're going to look at that a little further. And we are moving directly on to our demo. We're going to look at making some XSL modifications that I'll just do while we're talking, while I'm demoing. We're going to look at checking your work, like what's the stuff that can go wrong, and we are going to take a look at this same form deployed in the browser. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and share out my screen, I believe, as long as I click all the right buttons. And I'll minimize this guy so you're not just seeing this kind of infinite picture of the meeting itself. Okay, so hopefully everybody can see my screen. This is my demo form. It's a very simple form, and it's got some placeholder information for the things we're going to do. I've got this drop-down list. It is using a little file I've got called nutrition that is what it's using for its name, for its value and display name. We're going to change this to use a formula for the display name. This particular thing will only work in filler. Okay, it's not going to be browser compatible, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. I'm going to cancel that. These buttons, you can see right now they say left and right, and this is also, these two are also buttons just formatted to look like links. As you know, we aren't able to change our text alignment on buttons in the form itself in the UI, but this is something that we can change in the XSL. This does not work in the browser. So even though Filler uses IE for its rendering engine, it is doing some things differently than it will do in the browser. So that's another thing to keep in mind. So next, we'll look at some hyperlinks, and we're going to add some concat formulas to these hyperlinks, okay? And so if we take a look at these hyperlinks right now, you can see they just use a data source. But as we all know, we aren't able to do anything other than use a data source. So generally, I don't know about you, generally I end up adding fields that I'm using to hold the values for these particular hyperlinks. But we can in the XSL manually modify this to use a formula. And finally, we're going to add a picture for a table background. Out of all of this, the only thing that also works in the browser are these links, and not all of these links work in the browser. My Skype call link does not work in the browser. However, any of these changes, you know, from here down that we're going to do, everything but the drop-down will allow you to still publish your form in the browser. So in other words, it might look different in the browser, and the Skype call link wouldn't work, and the table background picture wouldn't show in the browser, but it doesn't prevent you from using your form in the browser. The change we'll make here actually will not let you use your form in the browser. You can publish it. I published it to Sandbox, and I admin approved it. But if you try to open it, you end up in this error state where you'll see an error message in the browser window, and at the same time you'll see a loading message. So it's actually kind of a fascinating error scenario. And then when I went and looked at the SharePoint logs, I could see by what was being logged that the issue was with my having a formula here instead of just a node set value. So that was kind of fascinating in its own weird little way. So in order to work with our form as source files, the first thing we have to do is publish it to export our source files. And I've already got these saved here, but I'm just going to overwrite the ones I've already got. And one thing I tend to do is make sure I've got some text that I can search on, or a unique button name that I can search on in order to find things easily in the XSL. Now that I've saved as source files, in order to actually save any changes I make to the XSL, I would have to have my form closed. So I'm going to go ahead and just close that and move that. And let's see. I think I've already got this guy open. I do. This is just Notepad++ being helpful. So this is my demo form where I saved it. This is the View 1 XSL. So I've already got this open. Now, you saw how simple that view was in InfoPath. There was not a lot there. But if you scroll down, you can see we've got almost 400 lines of text here. Okay? So it's worth having a methodology for finding things in here. And that's why I was mentioning, you know, make sure you've got text you can search for, even if you just temporarily give something a column heading name like find me, right? You know, right here I could be searching for to modify display in order to find my drop-down, and so on. So this is the XSL for our drop-down control. Okay, and you can see right now the value is going to be whatever's in my field, which is DDL. And then our options are right down here in the for each. So this section right here is what's providing our drop-down with its options. And so it's selecting the nutrition data source, and it's selecting the food, which is repeating. We'll take a look at that XML here in a second. And the value is name, and then right here is the display. Now, I understand. Right here we've got an attribute saying value, and we don't have any attributes saying name. You just have to, I guess, know that this is the one that's the display. Let me pop open that nutrition file so you can see it. I don't know if I've got it. No, I don't have it in my list of recently used. Of course not. That would be just so convenient. let me pop it open. So it's in my form files because I've got it added as a resource, and we just need to take a look at it. So here's my XML that I'm using, okay? And we noticed that we were looking at food and that I was using the name. Now what I'm going to do is, because this way it'll be easier for us to pick a food with an appropriate number of calories, right? I'm going to include the total calories with the name for my display drop-down. So instead of name, I'm going to use a concat statement here. A formula in here, you notice how my nutrition has encoded quotes. So it's using the encoded quote statement, so and quote semicolon. I'm going to go ahead and use single quotes in my concat statement because of being too lazy to type and quote. That's just me. And now the XPath to total calories, right? It's going to be from food. It's going to be calories / and this is an attribute, so attribute symbol total. So we would do calories / you can see that XPath is going to come in handy, right? Total. So here's a concat formula that's going to give me the name, a dash, and the calories in my drop-down for the display. So I'm going to save that, and then I'm going to design my form again. So I've got it open. Now, this is one change that if you make it, you're not going to be able to change other properties here in your drop-down list and save them. So if you needed to set up post-back settings or any of these things, you're going to want to get those taken care of before you make this change. Because if I try to make a change here, let's just try to change the size to something silly and say OK. Right? You must select a field or group because InfoPath is validating the fact that I don't have a display name here. And I don't have a display name here because InfoPath doesn't have the knowledge to be able to parse out that concat formula that I wrote. That's fine. It's just a matter of make sure you've got all these things in place before you make this change. And I'm going to preview this so we can take a look at it. And you can see now in my drop-down, I have the name and I've got the calorie count for each of my items. And the actual value, though, is still just the name. So the next thing let's look at are these buttons. Now, these buttons are using inline styles in order to define things like the margins and the width and things like that. So here's my button. We can see here's the control ID, button left. That's what I named him. Now you can go hop onto Google and look up look up how things need to look up the syntax for your text alignment. You can also take a look at another control, right? My hyperlink controls are using text align left for a style, and that's what I want to do with these buttons. So I'm going to go ahead and just copy that, right? And I know that for inline styles that I use things that are separated by semicolons. This is kind of just some basic HTML. Again, these are things that W3 Schools, a quick Google search. Now this guy, if I look at his name, he's a button right, so I don't want to align him left, I want to align him right. W3 Schools is going to have some good references for you. Let's just do our last two here. And this is the guy where I've got some additional decoration on him, and he is my button left link. He's the one I made look like a link, right? And this one is going to be to the right. And so we're just going to save. We're going to pop this open again. Okay, and you can see we're aligned left and we're aligned right. Again, this particular thing, if I publish this to the browser, when we look at it in the browser, I don't have any problems opening the form. The alignment doesn't stick. So it's one of those little tricks that'll look good in filler, isn't going to follow you through to the browser. Okay, and that's why don't rely on this stuff until you've tested it in both places. In fact, I no longer feel comfortable that my browser form will behave anything like my filler form, and I test everything all the way through. So next we can do some hyperlinks here. So in this case, it's the href that I need to change. And again, I can use a concat formula, and I'm going to concat mail to, right? And my email address. So that's a mail to link. You can find this this information for the syntax on this, you just go look it up. You can test it in a browser window. You can type in mail2: and your email address and hit enter and see what happens, right? That's a great way to test hyperlinks. My phone number, I'm going to use a Skype link here, so it would be concat again, whoops, parenthesis, and call to. And I think I was having better luck yesterday when I included a plus sign here, and karma, and then my phone number. There we go. And so there, now I've got a Skype link if I click it. My website, you know, you could concat in some things like, right, and then maybe my website just has the actual site name and so forth. And finally, this one, I wanted to do a report parameter. Don't know if anybody here uses SSRS, SQL reporting services. SQL reporting services is a great way to create reports on data. So if your form has data that you're putting into a database in particular, you can use a report to create kind of a cool print view of your form. You know, so once your form's been submitted, you could have a link that opened up your report and in a PDF, right? Because you can pass in rendering information. So we don't really have the bandwidth here to go through setting that up completely, but I do have a report that I set up with some genericized information. And let me get this, I'm copying this from another one where I've got the link. Let me get this basic link copied in and then we'll talk about it. So this would again be a concat. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to pass in a report parameter from my form. So let me just make sure I've got everything right there and then close my parentheses. And then we'll talk about this crazy looking link. Let me make this a little bigger. Okay, so we know we're encoding here. We've got HTML encoding. So these would be in normal syntax, just a regular ampersand, right? But we use and amp here. So this is my report server. And then this is the path to my actual report. Right, and then the parameters I'm passing in here are the additional parameters I'm passing in is the format that I want this in. I want it returned in a PDF. In this particular report, I have a parameter called draft, and in this case, I'm setting it to true. And I've got another parameter called document ID that I'm also passing in. And I'm actually, just in the interest of preserving all of our sanity, I'm going to pop my report server up in another window so that it wakes up. And we'll just save this, and let's take a look at our form now. Let's just preview this again. So now we've got these guys. Now these guys, if we go and we edit our hyperlink, you can see your formula here. Okay, and it's not having a problem with displaying it, unlike up here in our drop-down where our formula wouldn't display. And if I preview this foolishly without actually putting the fields on the form, let's get these fields on the form here. So I've got an email address and a report parameter and a phone number and a website. You know what, you guys, I'm disorganized. I didn't VPN in, which I'm also going to need to do to get that report to work, and I do want to show you that, so let me get that connected. Okay. Now I will be on the network. Okay, so moving on. So let's preview this again. And now if I type in an email address, right, mine, and tab out, now I've got a link, and I hover over it. You can see it's a mail to link. If I click on it, it pops open my email, all ready to send it. I'm not going to save my changes. Of course, I don't need to email myself. And then if I type in a website, whoops, looks like I already got a nice autofill there. You can see I've got a complete link. I click it, it opens. If I put in a phone number, I'm not actually going to Skype call whoever this poor person. Well, I guess I could because it's going to pop up. It asks me if I want to allow it to open, and then I can choose that. And let me just pull this over. And then it pops up a prompt saying you're about to call and asks me if I want to. I'll go ahead and cancel just in case that is an actual real number. Close that. And then finally for my report parameter, this is, again, it's a SQL Services Reporting Service report. Boy, that was a lot of words. And I'm going to go ahead and click that I want to open it. And this will pop open in a PDF form. Now, obviously, this isn't real data, but this is a real report that has been set up to look like a letter. It's got data from our database being returned. And it is another way around the challenges of print views in InfoPath is to have an SSRS report. So I just kind of wanted to introduce that idea to you. Finally, let's take a quick look at... yes, I want to save my changes. Are you kidding? Yes, I want to reload this. Are you kidding? Why do these things keep asking questions? Finally, let's take a look at using a background image. So again, we've got a table here. I have already added a resource file to the form to use as an image in this. And the basic syntax, let me just grab this from my other window here. The basic syntax here is background image, URL, and then the form file. This is just a relative path to your form file. Now, if you have this someplace outside your form, I'm imagining you could use a full URL like HTTP, blah, 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 blah. But keeping it as a form file, I think, works nicely. And so if we save this, there's lots of opening and closing and saving when you're doing these things. You spend a lot of time opening, closing, and saving your form, previewing your form, testing your form. But if you have a use case where a change like this could help you, particularly I like the mail to link, but if you have a use case where something like this can be very helpful to you, then make these little changes. Don't let the fact that you have to test a lot stop you. So now here we've got this picture showing up. If you go look in my resource files, right, you can see he's right here, and that's the one that I said I wanted to use. So let's take a look at this guy in the browser. Oh, wait. Before we do that, let's make some mistakes. Now, when I was making mistakes yesterday, because I think everybody knows by now that I definitely make mistakes, and when I was making mistakes yesterday, I found there were two general problems that I was having when I made mistakes. And so here's a mistake, right? My formula is not complete. So there's a mistake. Now, sometimes my form would open in design mode, but would not preview. And sometimes my form would not open in design mode at all. Now, this mistake, I think we're not going to open in design mode at all. Isn't that helpful? The operation failed. So if I hadn't known what mistake I made, I would be a little stuck at this point. What I found was if instead of previewing the form, I actually open the form, just double-click it so it opens, that InfoPath would then give me more information about where the problem was, right? Expected token, parenthesis, found EOF. And so I can put a parenthesis in there. I mean, it just shows me what the problem is, just like when you validate a rule. So if I fix this, let's go ahead and close you. If I fix this problem and make a different mistake, let's make the same mistake up here in our drop down. There he is. Make the same mistake here. And now let's open this up in design mode again. Because you're working on the form, you're designing it, it's most likely you're going to try to design it. So I try to design it, it opens up just fine, everything looks ducky. Now, it would be one of those things that you might do where you would be like, oh, well, it opened in design mode, I'm fine. And then you just get back to work, you make changes, you do all kinds of stuff, and then finally you get around to previewing it, right? And it's in preview that we have a problem now. You can see we've got the same error. It gives me a nice clear bit of information as to where my problem is, right? So we could get as far as preview and have a problem. So let's pop this back in. And then another mistake I made yesterday when I was doing this was I pasted this in without being smart enough to add my encoding, right? And I ran into an error. I think it popped up in design mode that time, right? Cannot open the selected form template. See how much, see how this particular design error is better than the one where the operation failed? And in this one, it doesn't tell me the problems with the view, but it does tell me a semicolon character was expected. The view was the file I was making manual changes to. Therefore, yes, okay, that's fine. Therefore, I should be able to quickly, kind of figure out what my problem was. I just made this change. But this is why I encourage you to, make these changes gradually. build them up and go from there. Let me make sure I am connected to VPN so I can show you my my template in the browser. My VPN seems to be failing, so you may just be stuck believing me on this one. Yeah, it looks like I'm not able to reconnect to VPN for whatever reason, so I'm not going to be able to show you the template in the browser. I'll just show you one more time, and oh, there we go. Maybe show you one more time in filler here. Oh, that's right. It's still broken. Got to save those changes. Let's try that again. Okay. So popping, we've had a few little network issues today, which I'm sure is why I'm having the VPN problem. So popping this guy open, what I saw in browser was, like I said, could not publish with this change in place, had to remove that change in order to, I mean, I could publish, but the form would not open in the browser with this change, so I had to remove that change. The left, right, that text alignment was not working. All of my button text was centered. My email hyperlink worked, so the mail to link worked, the website link worked, the report link worked, and the background picture did not show in my table. So these little image hacks, they aren't going to work in the browser. So that is that's pretty much it. If anybody has any questions, I'm going to go ahead and share out this guy again. And if anybody has any questions, feel free to type them into chat. I'll hang out here for a few minutes just in case. Touch base with us, and I can send you these samples. All the form files are right there with the template. The data connection, secondary data connection stuff is all there. And I encourage you, to dig into these form files and get kind of a feel for what's in there. Start simple. Don't take your most complicated form and look at that first. That's not going to be the most helpful approach for you. You're definitely going to want to start with the form that only has a few controls, like that one we were just looking at, and you'll find the XSL in that to be a little less daunting. Whenever I open up an XSL that's thousands of lines long, then that's always a challenge. Okay, so we've got a couple of comments on SQL reporting and using links. Stuart asks general guidelines on when to use an SS report versus an InfoPath print view. I would say, obviously, if your data is not in a database, then probably you're going to want to use an InfoPath print view. SSRS will report on XML. I find it challenging and difficult. Let me just, yes, sorry, 1 minute. Robbie, yes, this is being recorded. We will put this up on the web. So I find it challenging and difficult to use XML for an SSRS data source. Other people may have different experiences. In theory, at least, you would be able to create a report off of an XML saved to a SharePoint library. In practice, I've found the XML data connection to be challenging. However, if your data is being saved to a database from your form, I'd say SSRS is totally the way to go. Do a web search on SSRS URL parameters, and you will find a ton of information. I love being able to generate it as PDF, but you can generate with 2008, SSRS 2008, you can generate your report as a Word document too. So that's basically the same concept as having a Word print view, only you've got just so much better control. I have found that with Word and PDF and SSRS that I don't have consistent behavior. In other words, if I create a report that looks rockin' as a PDF, it might look abysmal as a Word document, so you sort of want to pick the format that you're going to want to export to and stick with it. But I do think that passing in those report parameters is a fantastic way to go, and I find that I would much rather work with, well, first off, I would rather work with a report any day than a Word print view. You almost have to drag me kicking and screaming to a Word print view. I'm very unhappy with the XSL that you have to go through for that. I find it painful, inconsistent, and just brutal. So I would really prefer a report personally. And InfoPath, as we all know, it's electronic forms. It's not made for printing. So in my opinion, always use SSRS. If you have data in a database, please use reporting services to get that data out. I think that's the way to go. Anybody have any other questions? Okay. Well, I'll hang out for a few minutes just in case anything pops up in the question window. Thanks so much for attending. I hope everybody learned a little something, and I hope everybody has a fantastic day.